Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are back on the dev server and it's time to have a look at a new battleship that is coming into the game for France. One that many have looked forward to, including myself. I've looked forward to this pretty much since the French Brewwater Tree was announced all that way back ago. And now that we have the coastal fleet in, now that we have a bunch more destroyers, it's time for the big boys, and not just the First World War ships, which kind of get annihilated by what is already there. This is the Dunkerque, which is the namesake of the Dunkerque class. There was two of these made, so maybe we'll see the other one come in at some point, but this is a big, drastic change compared to a lot of the other vehicles that we have in the game, which find themselves at this BR. The major difference between the Dunkerque and many other battleships and battlecruisers is this has a different way that it sets up its armaments. This is very much front heavy, so instead of having, let's say, a large turret on the back and one on the front, instead it just has two massive ones in the frontal area, and they both have quad sets of guns. So this means that you have 8 guns, which is usually the standard for a lot of these machines, but in 2 huge turrets instead of in dual turrets, which is something that you see from stuff that is in other areas of the tech trees. The major guns that this has access to are the 330mm, and since it has 8 of them, they do pack quite a nice punch. The other part which is really cool about it is because they're all frontally mounted, it means that you can make your silhouette as small as possible in terms of the way that people are, firing into you. One of the issues with trying to get all of your kind of guns on target with other vessels, so let's use the Repulse, for example, where it has these dual mounts, but it has 3 of them, so 2 on the front and then 1 on the back. If you want all of your guns to be on target and to be able to fire, you have to angle pretty much here, or pretty much even a bit further, because of this that's in the way. So you can see how big the silhouette of the Repulse is in the water compared to what this one would be, which is this. And that is what excites me. That is what makes me interested in how the Dunkerque is going to play compared to a lot of other vehicles, because now you can go forward to the enemy. You don't have to try and angle and sit away from the enemy. Instead, you can push forward, you can look at them, you can fire as you go, and you can actually get more involved in the battle instead of having to stay back and hope that you are going to get a bunch more shots off. Very similar to how a lot of people play the Scharnhorst that I've seen in Naval. You can play with the Dunkerque too. Now, even though it has this huge main armament on the front, that isn't its only armament. It does have some 130mm too, so it has 3 quad sets of them, and then it also has 2 dual sets on each side over here. You also have a bunch of 37mm, which are kind of the slow-firing 37s, and also 8 quad sets of 13.2s, which you can see here. So the secondary armament is pretty good in the 130s, but the AA armament pretty poor. There's no 20s, there's no 40s. Instead, it's just these weird French conglomeration guns that are nowhere near as good as the competition that you have in this area. The more interesting thing about those secondaries, though, is the layout of this vehicle. Since it's very frontally centered around these major guns, you have all of this ammo which is sat around them, so you've got to be a bit careful of that. You also have the rangefinders, which aren't as good as others, which, are on the towers themselves. But when it comes to fire directors near the bridge, they are standard. So 15 seconds to calculate, 8 seconds to update. Very standard on the setup. The guns themselves have a fire rate of 1.5 rounds per minute, but that can get up to 2 rounds a minute, so 30 seconds on the fire. And also, the guns on the back do have a pretty good fire rate too, going up to 10 rounds a minute, so they reload every 6 seconds. The center is the engines and the transmissions, which is a lot smaller than many other machines that are actually in this game when it comes to battleships and battlecruisers, so much more efficient probably in terms of moving around, or maybe it's just a little bit slower compared to others. But the main thing is this huge amount of ammunition in the front. So even though you have all of these guns in a small area, and that is great to make the silhouette smaller. It also means if they do hit you, you're going to go pop pretty aggressively. So you have to rely on your armor. Now, what is the armor on this machine? Well, it has 310mm around the ammo elevators. It has 210mm at the front. It also has a belt of 225 and a lower set of 40mm between. You also have this 125mm kind of deck as well, which is under the deck too. So this just covers the ammo and nothing else. And then you have even little pieces of armor between there to try and keep it going too. So there is a lot of defense around this ammo, and we'll have to see how many vehicles are able to easily penetrate it and just hammer it over and over again while the Dunkerque is trying to get off shots. The other problem with having such a small amount of turrets is if one of them gets taken out, you have now lost half of your firepower. And because because of the fact that the two major parts of this vehicle are in the same place and going to be faced towards the enemy, that's where people are going to be trying to hit. So it's a double-edged sword. It's easier to survive because it'll be harder for the people to hit you, but the people who are shooting at you are going to be shooting at the prime areas they want to be shooting at. So the rounds that hit will do more damage, but it's harder to hit. Does that make sense? That's basically what we're looking at from this vehicle. So, the 330mm guns. It has access to HE, which has the Melanite, which I found to be very effective on a lot of these French vehicles. 57 kilos worth of TNT equivalent. And then also, you have the SAPCBC, which has 18.21 kilos of TNT equivalent, and also pens up to 540mm on the rounds. Then you have, for the 130mm, access to HE, which has 4 kilos of TNT, 37mm of pen, SAPBC, which has 70mm of penetration and 1.76 kilos of TNT, and then HETF, which is just the standard HE round with access to a time fuse. So good against aircraft, but not really anything else. It also does get a hydroplane, which is really nice to see on the back here. Don't want to launch it because I've tried to launch a few hydroplanes on the dev server and it's broken the game. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem. But overall, you're looking at a vehicle that will be hopefully different to what you've seen in other areas. For where it is in the tech tree, by the way, it is after the Lorraine, so it isn't after the Bretagne. My guess is they probably have something other planned for this line. But if you want to get access to it, it's left all the way. So for me, I'm just really happy to see this. And I'm sure many other people are happy to see this too. There are a few other designs of a few other vehicles that have access to this kind of layout. And I'm looking forward to see those too. My hope is that we see them more in the near future, just so we get something slightly different in terms of what's played for Naval. Instead of just having, you know, what is kind of set up already in the game. Now, this camera actually goes above here, so it's really hard to get stuck. And the other thing is this one is actually on the bridge, so you can see it's mounted way higher than previously. So they've actually put the camera in the bridge of the vehicle instead of where it used to be, which is more down in a central position. One of the things you may have also noted is the turrets on this thing are actually quite fast. And this is very different to a lot of other battleships, but also a lot of other French vehicles, where their turrets are pretty slow to move around. So it is really nice to see that this vehicle has much better turrets in that way. You can see the big old smoke nowadays, and of course the rounds clattering in to the enemy. Always lovely to see on a vehicle like this. They all missed. Classic. It's lovely to see a vehicle like this, something that changes the meta a little bit, something that offers something a little bit different, and I just hope that in the future that's what we get, you know? We get some things which are slightly different, slightly weird, slightly wonky. That's exactly what the Dunkerque is. Look at that silhouette, by the way. Big, thick on the side, but when it comes to the front, pretty tiny. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.